Hello everybody and welcome to this video on making your model wood puzzle cube. Okay, so we have a completed one here, our 3 by 3 by 3 inch puzzle cube. Okay, and let's see, let me get a piece out that I was gonna look at. Okay, so it's made of 5 pieces, either 4, 5, or 6 individual wood cubes. Okay, so let's talk about these wooden cubes and putting them together. So before we get started, let's make sure we have all our materials. You need your 27 wood cubes, you need rubber bands, and you need your wood glue. That's pretty much it, okay? Now before we start gluing and putting things together, let's talk about one thing, and that is the grain of the wood. The wood has a grain in it that flows in like one direction, basically. And I can tell if it's with the grain, it's gonna be smoother, but if it's cut on the side that's across the grain, it's gonna be just a hair rougher. And it also kind of has a little bit different, maybe a little bit darker than the with the grain. So if I rotate around, these are all sides that are with the grain. This was cut against the grain, and this was cut against the grain. So typically you're gonna have 4 sides that are cut with the grain, and then 2 sides that are gonna cut against the grain. And you can usually tell. When I'm gluing my blocks together, I want to make sure I'm gluing against the grain with against the grain, okay? So like that, or with the grain with the grain. Okay, so it's all my piece, my puzzle piece is all, the grain is all going in one direction. So if I'm gonna attach another piece across the top here, I don't wanna do the against the grain, I wanna do the with the grain, because this is a with the grain side. So I would attach it that way. And if I look at it, I would have against the grain here, and then against the grain and against the grain here. The whole piece is still flowing in the same direction. Okay, we can look at this piece here that I previously made. These are all against the grain cuts on this side. All throughout here are with the grain. Inside here is against the grain, and these pieces all go in with the grain. Okay, so they were all glued together like that. If you can't tell for some reason, or that you made a mistake or something, it's probably not that big a deal. I just find it helps the puzzle go together at the end if you keep the grains consistent across like that. All right, another thing you want to pay attention to is if you have a piece like this, especially these U-shaped pieces where another piece is going to fit in the middle of it, when you're gluing them together, you actually put a block in the middle there. Okay, sorry about that. So you actually put a block in the middle there so that you don't glue these two too close together and then you can't get your piece in between there, because then it's going to require a lot of sanding to open it up, or breaking these apart and then re-gluing them. Okay, so to help prevent that, if you put a piece in the middle, that should prevent you from having to redo anything later on. Now, these are 1 inch by 1 inch cubes, but there is some slight variation in their size. Okay, so it does happen where you have to do a little sanding to get that a little wider or something like that, even if you took all the precautions that you were supposed to. All right, so let's talk about gluing them together. Let's move that. Well, actually, let me keep that piece. Let's say I want to make this piece. Okay, I'm gonna make it in 2 and/or 3 cube segments at a time. Okay, so for instance, I'm probably gonna make. I know I have 2 cubes here that are together. I have 3 cubes here that are together, and then I have 1 kind of by itself. All right, and I'm gonna glue these separately first. Glue these parts separately together, and I'm gonna show you that. And then put all 3 pieces together and glue them together to make the one piece. Okay, so why do we do that? Because we're going to use our rubber bands as our clamps. Okay, these are going to clamp the wood together. And if I have too many angles going on, or if I'm trying to glue in too many different directions, oftentimes it will result in a piece like coming apart during the drying phase, you know, and lots of, you know, or sliding, or lots of other mishaps happening. Okay, so let's make this, actually let's make this part here, these two first. All right, and it doesn't matter what you start, if you want to glue the grain to grain, or against the grain to against the grain first, or with the grain to with the grain first, just as long as you keep it consistent as you're working. Okay, so I'm going to start with against the grain to this against the grain. Okay, I'm just going to put a little of my white glue or wood glue, okay, on there. You might get a little towel to have next to you. Okay, not too much, you don't need too much, but you do want to smooth it out. Okay, and then I'm going to find that against the grain. I'm going to put those together, and then that has to dry for at least like 30 minutes before I want to take it off. And to get that to stay together, I'm going to take a rubber band, kind of twist it around. You can do it maybe 3 times, 2 times, 3 times. But then I want to make sure it's lined up, because usually a lot of times when you're putting the rubber band on, it will move on you. Okay, so I like to put it down on the table, make sure it's flat across there. I can use my fingers to kind of make sure that it's hadn't adjusted this direction, that direction, and then that piece is good to dry. And I'm just going to let it set for a good, I would say probably at least, well, 10 to 15 minutes before you do anything else to it, 30 minutes before you take the rubber bands off of it, and then it really won't completely dry for probably about 24 hours. Okay. All right. So I've made this part, just those two, I've made this part. Now I want to make these 3 parts. So let's see, now I gotta pay attention to which direction I was doing this. So I did against the grain to against the grain, and that's gonna go here. So my against the grain needs to go in that direction, okay, facing this way and that way. And that means this piece is gonna be put together with the grain, okay? So just like that. And just like before, glue, spread it out. I'm just going to lightly push it together there, and then I'm going to do the other side. Again, paper towel, just do that on the paper, wipe it off. Okay, then take my rubber band, especially on these 3 cube ones, they will adjust on you, and you kind of have to get that back together after you put the rubber band on it. So yeah, that was all. So just put it back down on the table, kind of flatten it out, make sure the table, if you have a good flat table, that's perfect. And just checking these sides with my fingers to make sure they're not overlapping one way or another, smoothed out. Okay, and then that's good. I'm just going to let that dry for, again, a good 30 minutes before I come back to it. And I can work on multiple pieces. I can, you know, start making multiple parts. Just keep them together. So let's see, I know these 2 pieces are going to go together, so I'm going to put these over there. So, you know, do a little organization for yourself so that you know which of your, you know, 2, 3, and single cubes, and I can even put this one with that because I know those are going to go together. And then I might even put this one over here with that. So again, organization. I know these 6 pieces are going to make this piece. Okay, and if you don't have, obviously you won't have a wood cube to put by it, but you have your linking cubes that you can, you know, place by it and go, okay, well, this is going to be that piece. All right. All right. Once I'm going to come back once these are dry and show you how I'm going to put those together to make this final piece. Thanks.